there, this is Sherry Hayes with MomDelights.com. I'm the mom of 15, been homeschooling for about 33 years, and today we're going to talk about something so important. I hear people talking about it all the time, and there are a lot of assumptions. People ask me questions. They say, Sherry, what do I do for preschool? What do you suggest for preschool? Or someone say, you know, my preschooler is doing X or Y or Z, you know, like that. And because I remember when I was a young mom, I was so eager. I had this little girl and I had a little tiny baby boy. And I said, you know what? My kids, they're going to be top notch. My kids, and you know, you compare, and this little girl's doing this and this little boy's doing this at the same age, and is my child behind, and you know, all that kind of thing. And then we're told over and over again, you know, if you don't start your kids early, they're going to be behind, and all that kind of stuff. Well, we're going to challenge some of that thinking today. You know, after having 15 children, I can tell you that most of the stuff we've been taught and conditioned to believe is a bunch of hooey, okay? Horse manure, bull hockey, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so I have all those questions, and I want to start with this idea that we all have, okay? That these two ideas, okay? One, children won't learn unless you lead them. And number two, the earlier the better. Now, it is true that children need teachers. They need leaders, but not in the way we've been taught to think about that, okay? Now, we've been taught a lot of social engineering baloney, but common sense, if we would take for a moment and allow ourselves to peel off the layers, kind of like an onion, you have to peel it off little by little, we would discover that there is actually a common sense area where true education that actually is more aligned with God's purposes and how He created children. There's a place that is so far removed from what we're used to thinking of as early education, okay? And I want to tell you that social engineers have known how to slowly work on our minds and condition us. They've fed us the same stuff over and over again. And I find that we not only need to be red-pilled, quote unquote, about what's been happening with government in our society and different things in our society, we need to be red-pilled about education, period. Yeah, it's really, really important that we're open to new ideas. Okay, so actually the first federally instituted preschool education program was done by President Lyndon Johnson. He is the same fella that decided to do the War on Poverty, which was actually the war on impoverished families, because his programs destroy families, especially in poor neighborhoods and minority neighborhoods. His programs destroyed the family. Well, it's his engineering group that thought up this Head Start thing where you take kids at younger ages and you take them from their homes where they're comfortable, where they, well, maybe not so much. I'm kidding. No, you take them from their homes, from their mothers, and you put them in an institution. Now, you might argue with me and say, Sherry, there are homes where the moms have to work, the dads left, and, you know, and so maybe in an extreme situation, it might be good to have someone that will watch a young child and actually try to teach them some things. But by and large, what has happened is by doing such a thing and having it there for the poorer kids, we've actually made it an institution to where even people that actually have a decent income and are very stable, they're doing the same thing with their kids. And so it's just another way that we're slowly eating away at the family that God has instituted. This is God's, besides the church, this is God's foremost institution in the world for stability, to raise children for His kingdom. It's the family. It's the church and the family. You understand that, right? Now, when I talk about the church, I'm talking about the body of Christ, not the physical building. You understand? But the church and the family are God's institutions, and the devil hates everything God does. So he's been trying to destroy the church and the family from the beginning. Okay? So he's trying to destroy families. And why not take it apart? Like, take little kids out of the home. Then the mom goes, oh, I don't have anything to do all day. Now I'll go out and work. And things just start tumbling and tumbling down, and they roll down the hill, and they get bigger and bigger, and this snowball starts, and it crushes us. It gets okay, now, I got on my tirade, I was on my soapbox, and I'll continue to be on one, just letting you know. So we've all come up to parenthood with the wrong ideas. Sorry about that noise. with the wrong ideas about young children, okay? But here's the truth, okay? Children are voracious learners, and y'all know this if you've spent any time with little kids. They practically beg to know things. They want to know how to do things. They want to see how you're doing it. They want to know why this happens, and how come this, and how come that, and why are you doing that, and what is that, you know, right? And you know this is true because if you leave any type of, like, ingredients for baking or anything on a lower level, what are your kids going to do with that? They're going to find a way to dig into it and start doing experiments at the tiniest of ages. I have pictures of our little Eliana, and she would be covered with flour and like take a rolling pin and you know, be dressed only in a diaper, you know, and be covered because she'd dig into my bags of flour and just, you know. Little kids, they want to experiment. They are like little scientists. They're experimenting all the time, right? Okay, preschool. Okay, if you really know, originally preschool was not about teaching little kids, like teaching them their letters, their numbers, and their shapes and all that kind of stuff. Originally, it was just a way of slowly acclimating them to the institutional school environment. So they're used to being home all day with their mommy or their daddy or whatever, and they're used to playing and having a lot of freedom and knowing, like, you have some breakfast, you have some lunch, your mama might read you a story, you play with your toys, you go with your parents to do things. No, so preschool was like, okay, no, because now you're going to have to sit still for a certain amount of time. You're going to have to learn to follow directions. You're going to have to interact with other children that maybe you don't maybe even like. Maybe they're mean to you. Let's be real, right? So you have to interact socially, you know, you have to have social interaction. Funny, but socialism. Is there a connection? Sounds to me like they want a plan to make us all part of a herd, a hive, or an anthill. Let's move on. So anyway, so that's really what it was originally meant to do. Now, under the Common Core directives, we know that preschool is a pretty intense time. The teachers actually have to try to teach kids specific tasks and specific things. And if they don't muster up, then what they do is they label them special, so that then they don't have to have their scores count on the tests. Have you heard this one yet? Yeah. It's a racket, guys. So anyway, so I want to read to you some authority higher than myself that you can trust. This is my well-loved copy of, let me show you first. Let me show you Ruth B. Chick. Do you know Ruth B. Chick? She is no longer with us, but she has been so amazing. She was so amazing to encourage us in our homeschooling efforts for many years. She wrote this book, The 3 R's, and it includes a home start in reading, a strong start in language, and an easy start in arithmetic. This is for early learners. And I have this book by her, and she has other ones. I have one over here. It's called You Can Teach Your Child, something like that. It's orange. Anyway, so this is a biblical home education. This I got recently. I had checked it out from the library, and I had looked and looked and looked, and I finally found a new copy. So I ordered this one recently, and oh, this is amazing. A biblical home education is just, she just kind of puts everything together. It's really neat. You'll like it. But anyway, what I wanted to read to you concerning preschool is some things she wrote in here about how people tend to try to push young children into, like we were saying, formal academics at early ages. And so I might read a little bit here to you from what she's written, but I won't read the whole because I don't want to plagiarize or anything. But you guys understand that we're reading it for the purpose of discussing it, and not because I'm saying this is information that I wrote. Anyway, copyright stuff, right? So, let's see. In walking, now she talks about there are extremes out there. There are extreme of, you take your baby, and from the time they're born, then you start, the words on things, and you start pointing, you start, teaching them. You try to start to do that from babies, okay? Then there's the other group that says, no, my child's not going to learn until they're 10, right? Okay, so learn formal academics, not like I'm going to keep them strapped to a table. They're not going to learn nothing until they're 10. No. They're going to learn like basic life stuff, and then we're going to do formal academics when they're 8 or 10. Okay, that's the difference. But she says that this book right here is written kind of more in the middle of the road, but she tends toward late rather than early. Okay, not because there's anything especially wrong with early systems, but because we have seen more damage done to the early children. Okay, it usually is not the baby who shows any readiness or eagerness to learn to read early, but it is too often an over-anxious mother pushing for it. Now, that's not always the case, but it can be that way, okay? Just be honest about ourselves. Okay, and occasionally in a family, older children will play school with the younger sibling and teach the child to read. In one family, the children sprawled around a newspaper each night and taught the youngest the letters and sounds in headlines. It was similar to playing with a doll, only this one was live and particularly bright. She learned to read before age 3, and no harm came to her because of it, because they were just playing, right? Some mothers may enjoy playing with their dolls in this way, and the children will not be harmed. Unfortunately, other mothers are feeding their own egos when they do this. Wanting their children to outdo other children, the comparison. Remember, we're all taught this. We're all conditioned to think, hey, we've got to keep up. We have peers. We've got to go neck and neck with all our peers. Everybody must be the same. Our child cannot be behind. Yeah? So, we don't want people to judge us or think ill of us. Peer-dependent thinking. Wanting their children to outdo, they pressure and damage both the child's personality and the relationship between child and mother. Just putting that out there. It is true that some children can learn to read remarkably early, but the fact that they can does not necessarily mean that they should. Should is another question. Some kindergartners in the district received extensive, one school district did this experiment, okay? They took 2 groups of kindergartners. One group was taught phonics and reading skills. The other was taught science, like, they melted ice and they grew plants and they looked at bugs and all that kind of stuff, okay? Now, what they found was that when it was time, the reading children, okay. And what did the school district learn? Here I am. By 3rd grade, the science children, the ones who didn't start early with academics, were far ahead of the reading children in their reading scores. Why? They could read on more topics and understand at higher levels because the time that the others were spending trying to learn the phonics rules and the sounds and words, these other kids were learning interesting things so that when they read about them, they understood what they meant. So not only were their reading skills better, their comprehension was higher, which is a lot of problems we have today. It's not that kids can't read, but they can't comprehend what they are reading, right? So they're saying, giving kids, and she goes on here to say, what happened was their kids have only a certain amount of time to take in all of the information of the environment around them and to start making sense of it. Does that, if you understand what I'm saying? And so that when they sit down then to do the formal academics, whether it's reading, writing, or arithmetic too, and there's another experiment done I could share about arithmetic, same idea. When they sit down to do that, now it's like they read a sentence about a shark or about the weather. They have experience with these things. So it makes sense to them. Maybe even they're more interested in these things because they haven't been pounded and say, no, you can't learn that until you learn this. So what happens is their brains, it's not really their brains. It's just the information that they have is of a higher and more useful, it's just higher and more useful than the kids who are just taught the mechanics of everything at young ages. So just let that sink in for a minute and just look at it in light of preschool. What are we doing with kids in preschool when we're pressuring them to learn X or Y or Z? What are we really doing to them? You know what I'm saying? We're actually taking away from them the years when they should be able. It's just a second. Let me get my computer. I'll get my computer up in a minute. But there's something I want to read to you on the computer, so that's why I'm distracted. But the years when they should be learning these valuable things, they'll never get those years back. Do you understand? And so when we've taken these little kids and we take them and we pressure them and we put them in an institutionalized setting, or even at home, when we start pressuring them with these academics, we take away time they could be spending learning things that when we finally do sit down with them and get all formal and all expectations, for one thing, they're more mature so they can handle it. For another thing, they have all this knowledge that they built up. So when you say, look at what color is a shark? Oh, shark is gray or silver. You know what I'm saying? They know these things because you've been reading books to them. They've been watching documentaries. They've been observing. They watch how cats play together. They watch the squirrels. They watch how plants grow. They watch the seasons. And here's another thing. Let me go further in her book. Let me read it. She'll bring it out. Okay. The real stuff your child learns does not have to be only science. Science is natural because children are curious about everything, right? Okay. They can learn about art and art and literature, money. They can learn about banking. You take them to the bank. Listen, there was this one family when I was a kid, and they had 7 children, which to us was like, oh my goodness, 7 children. Now I have 15 now. But back then it was crazy. So they had 7 children, and they would take the 7 children with them, and they were like, I think the oldest was like 10 or 12. And they would sit in a church service, and everybody just marveled. I mean, their jaws dropped. They just couldn't believe it. And they said, how come your children are so well behaved? And the father gave answer this question that stayed with me and helped me in all my homeschool, all my life as a mom. He said, we just include our kids in what we're doing. And when they feel included, they feel secure. And they're settled inside themselves, and they don't have to act up. Well, cool. Anyway, so when you include your kids in what you're doing, they're naturally learning all kinds. They're like little sponges, right? So they're taking in everything you're doing, and this is like 2, 3. Here's another thing. Haven't you really been teaching them for years? Like by the time they're 4 years old, they're talking pretty good. Who taught them to do that? It was a lot their own inclination, but weren't you the one that was leading them to do all these things? Why do we have this insecurity that our kids, we can't handle our kids or teach our kids or help our kids to learn basic things in life? Why is that? I think that's a trained insecurity that benefits social engineers. Just my thought. Anyway, so she continues. Okay, pre-reading instruction then is wider than the whole world. Teach about the cooking and cleaning going on in your kitchen. Teach good eating habits, nutrition, care of teeth, and teach about the stars and the God who made them. Solve problems. How can we arrange the sleeping when Grandma comes to visit? How can we keep baby brother from eating the crayons? Read aloud to your child. Teach nursery rhymes. Ask questions and let the child ask you questions and have a warm response. Not, I'm busy, go sit down, go watch that show, I am busy, I can't be bothered with your questions, you ask too many. No. Say, oh, you have a question? Just a minute, let me finish this. Okay, so what's your question? You might have to finish something. If you're going to stir the gravy or it's going to boil it, it's okay. But don't say, oh, why are you always bothering me? You always have so many questions. Go sit over there. Leave me alone. Instead, say, oh, just a minute. Let me stir this, and then I'll go see what you want, and we'll answer your question. Okay, just a minute. Can you wait just a minute? And then answer those questions. That, my dears, is the best preschool program ever invented on the planet. The best one. You know what? People say, you have to have a curriculum for preschool. No, you don't. You just have to be a mommy. And that's funner than anything anyway. Now, there's nothing wrong with sitting with your child and you might even get some coloring pages or some dot-to-dots or whatever, and you're coloring and you're teaching the colors while you color. Hey, do you want a red? No, which one is red? Oh, that's right. You got the red one. Right? So you teach them colors. Let me ask you something. Stupid preschool books. Have you ever read one? Have you ever taken a stupid preschool workbook? Have you ever watched Sesame Street and wanted to scream? I'll tell you what, Sesame Street came out when I was a little kid. And, of course, I had self-taught grandparents and everything, and they were always talking about important things about health and the stock market, and none of them were at college, but they taught health and the stock market, and they were accomplished, and they taught themselves all kinds of stuff. So I was used to being around that kind of stimulation all the time. So when I sat down as a little kid, this is when it first came out, okay? Sesame Street, I think, was 1 or 2 years old when I first saw it. And they had to teach you things like up and down. I wanted to scream as a little kid. I thought, what child watching this stupid show doesn't know the difference between up and down? Or in and out? You don't need a curriculum for that, guys. You just don't need a curriculum for that. Now, I'm going to read some more stuff to you, but first I want to go on my computer. I want to read to you something that will be interesting, I think. Now, this right here is a list. I got this. Now, if you ever kind of get stuck and you feel like you're not doing enough, you don't have any direction, and you just, sometimes it's nice. We talk about freedom and all that kind of stuff, but it's nice sometimes to have a free framework, at least, right? A lot of people have been really blessed to use the worldbook.com. Let's see, it's called Typical Course of Study. Now, I'll try to link it below, but you can find it on your own. And if you look up the typical course of study for each grade, now, a lot of it's turkey baloney, okay? So I don't pay attention to it, but sometimes it can be a little nice. Say, I would do all that stuff anyway. So here's what the typical, this is a typical course of study for preschoolers. Now, as I read this list, I want you to think of how many things on this list you are already doing with your child, which you'd be amazed how many there are. Okay. This is a list of things that preschoolers should be doing. Participate in group movement activities. Okay, that's social engineering baloney. Basically, it's like, everybody stand at attention, move your right arm, move. I could just play Simon Says, right? Okay. Move to different musical beats and rhythm. Isn't that called dancing? Oh, okay, sorry. Dance to different types of music. I think those are the same things. Experiment with musical instruments. Well, I think if you gave a kid an empty oatmeal box, I think he'd be using it for a musical instrument pretty quickly. Why not give him real musical instruments like a harmonica or something, or a recorder, right? Participate in group music activities. Well, that's pretty much the same thing, isn't it? This is just the arts part, by the way. And it goes on and on and on. Demonstrate, okay, it says sing familiar songs, improvise songs, use props to enhance movement activities, whatever. Represent fantasy and real-life experiences through pretend play. What child doesn't do that? I don't know. Create and use props and costumes during dramatic play. Isn't that called dress up? You see how this gets really stupid really quick. Demonstrate understanding of color, shape, and line. Like I said, coloring with mommy. It's really pretty easy to do. Okay, participate in teacher-guided visual arts activities. Well, today, you can do it like, let's cut out a snowflake with a pair of scissors. That's visual art activities. Are you getting it yet? Are you getting it? That's a bunch of hooey that you can do on your own. Just have fun with your kids. Just remember some fun things you did and do them with them. When you're rolling out a pie crust, give your little one little pieces of pie crust and say, make your own pie crust, and they'll smash it and do things with it and make their own little pie. You can have them, you want to stir up the batter, just give them and let them do some stirring. Wow, don't they feel big? Get them when you've done your dishes and there's just a few plastic ones, put a little apron on them, set them up in a chair against the sink, put the back to the sink so it won't slide out from under them, and have them wash dishes. That's water play, isn't it? Yeah, so a lot of this stuff in institutional settings, they have to set everything up and make it all official. But I got to tell you, at home we have the best science equipment that little kids could ever use. We have real things. Now, Montessori, I think Montessori is kind of fun for a lot of people because it actually goes along these same lines, but it's still more formalized and it's not really necessary. Okay, so I could read to you more stuff. Let me show you this other book that I want to use. Okay, this is The Successful Homeschool Family Handbook by Dr. Raymond Moore. Okay, well, actually, it's his wife too. His wife, Dorothy Moore, writes in it. And I mean, I think I could spend a whole session just on this book, right? And I want to really, I think the next one, I'm going to share with you some actual books that you can use for preschool and early elementary. And I think that would be a lot of fun, don't you? But this is a book, I mean, this is well-loved. Look, my kids have crayoned it. My preschoolers were practicing their lines and their colors on it. But I want to share some things in here that I think are very appropriate for this discussion. Okay, here's one. Let's see. He has some really scientific research to back up his suppositions. But here's something. I'll read to you. Instead of studying how best to meet our children's needs, we simply do what everyone else seems to be doing and often put our little ones out of their homes, and away from environments that best produce outgoing, healthy, happy, creative children. More researchers, that's the people who wrote this book, more researchers concluded from their federally sponsored studies that America is placing its little children in formal settings long before most of them, particularly boys, are ready. The effect on their mental and emotional health is devastating. Devastating. Dropout rates also are mute testimony to the problem. And I want to read something else to you that's going to freak you out, because we're all told that if you don't have everybody learning by the age of 3, then they are never going to go to high school. They're never going to amount to nothing. They're going to be awful. Let me read something to you that's going to boggle your brain, okay? This is going to be crazy. Okay. A fellow named Rower wrote this, okay? He is, let's see, who is he? Anyway, I'll find out I'll find him. Anyway, his name is Rower. It's Rohwer. That's his name. Okay, he says, all of the learning necessary for success in high school can be accomplished in only 2 or 3 years of formal skill study, not 6, 2 or 3. Just think about it. Delaying mandatory instruction, delaying it, in the basic skills until the junior school years could mean academic success for millions of school children who are doomed to failure under the traditional school system. Just let that sink in. I mean, this is, who is this guy now? Let's see. Let's see. I'm trying to find out so you know that Rower agreed. Let's see. Anyway, I have to find out now. He's mentioned him before this, but I can't remember where he started. But anyway, this Rower fella is has a doctorate and is a professor or something like that. That really sounds convincing, doesn't it? Okay, but anyway, you understand the idea. Okay, here's another example. When Dr. J.T. Fisher, later dean, quote unquote, of American psychiatrists, started school at 13, unable to read or write, and graduated from a Boston high school at 16, he thought he was a genius until he found that any normal child could do the same. Okay. He became the dean of psychiatrists. Now, I don't agree with psychiatry. But you understand, he had to be very educated. He didn't know how to read or write until the age of 13. He started school at 13. He didn't know how to read or write. Finished school in 3 years, graduated at 16, and went on to be the dean of psychiatry at that time. You know, it's not okay. So just think about that. And I think this was probably in the 60s, 50s or 60s. And they were more, they had more strenuous academic requirements back then. So if you think about it, all this stuff that we're being fed about, you know, all this Common Core, we've got to get all this testing, and all this kind of stuff, and we got to pressure these little kids. You're going to have to hurry, and you're going to have to do some preschool. I mean, there's just no way you can get it. No. Preschool should be developing the heart and the mind and the soul. You know, this is about a relationship. I'm not teaching my kids so they can like check off little boxes. I'm teaching this so they can be whole people that can be the innovators and the problem solvers for a generation that's going to really need that. That's going to be people that have been so socially engineered they have no idea. My kids are going to shine like the bright sun, not because they're the brightest and smartest, but just because they're whole people. Yeah, and they know that. They know that they're created in the image of God, and God has been able to enthuse them with himself. That's going to be the key for my kids, hopefully. Not all of them take it, though. Some of them get influenced by the world. They feel strange because they're so smart, so then they go, well, I got to be like other people and be dumb. Doesn't make any sense. But anyway, so I hope I've answered some of your questions about preschool that kind of give you some direction and maybe set you free so you can just live life and enjoy your family and enjoy your kids and develop that relationship so that when you do sit down to teach them algebra, there is a kindness and a gentleness and a sweetness between you, hopefully. Okay, I love you. I'm going to let you go. I got to go do some grocery shopping. So have a wonderful day. God bless you. And remember, he is the creator of all things. He has created man. You know, the earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, the world and all they that dwell therein. We belong to a creator who is love. And that's the best thing to remember today. Please like and subscribe. Bye-bye.